Welcome, everyone. My name is Julia Liusen, President of Developer Division at Microsoft. Today, we have a special guest, Kara Sprague, Executive Vice President and GM, Application Delivery for F5.
Thanks, Julia. It's great to be here with you.
It's awesome that Microsoft and F5 have been partners for more than a decade. We have been jointly delivering solutions that help you get the most value from your technology investment, whether for dynamic data centers, cloud solutions, or unified communications. With regard to this new joint solution that we're developing together, we have a huge announcement today. But before we get started on the announcement, let's first talk about the digital transformation that the world is seeing, particularly in this post-pandemic world of remote working. So, Kara, as you know, digital transformation is a strategic focus for Microsoft. And we have been working with companies and industries for some time now with our digital transformation journey. So how is F5 working to address the network and security needs?
Well, today, nearly every organization is accelerating their digital transformation efforts, but we find that they're flying blind. They lack visibility into how many applications they have, let alone how each app is performing, or even if those applications are secure. Applications, both traditional and modern, derive many challenges and many advantages from being distributed throughout on-prem, public cloud, and edge environments. But this often fragments the visibility and enterprise-wide control that our customers want. So F5 is empowering app owners, developers, and IT operators with the telemetry and closed-loop automation required to effectively troubleshoot, identify threat areas, and deliver new digital capabilities in minutes.
That's really great to hear. To set the stage for this specific announcement, I just want to talk for a moment about cloud modernization. Adoption of cloud is a key pillar of digital transformation efforts, and Microsoft has been working with cloud architects, developers, and IT professionals on lift, shift, and modernization. We're working with a lot of open source developers and open source ecosystem, and we see that NGINX is a very common technology that our developers adopt. Now, F5 acquired NGINX a few years ago. So from your experience, Kara, what are some of the challenges that developers and enterprises face when they try to adopt NGINX in the cloud?
Well, certainly we see developers and enterprises face many challenges in their cloud transformation journeys in general, and especially with regard to ensuring the resiliency in their mission-critical applications and their web services. So I'll talk about a few. One is there can be a high level of effort required for these developers and enterprises to migrate their application delivery from on-prem into public cloud environments. A second challenge we see is that once you've integrated or migrated one or more applications to the cloud, there can also be a lack of consistency in the performance and visibility between the on-prem and the public cloud environments. And then the final challenge I would highlight is that the advanced traffic management features that our customers use on-prem to keep their applications secure and performant haven't been fully integrated. And so these are usually features that cloud architects, developers, IT professionals, and business decision makers all need to have when those applications are running in the cloud. In general, I know many of our users know that NGINX solves many problems, and that's why it's the trusted web server for over 400 million websites. NGINX can serve many use cases. It includes load balancing, reverse proxy, a content cache, API gateway, among others. And in the case of NGINX for Azure, NGINX lets companies of any size deliver secure and high-performance applications with advanced traffic management and monitoring. It addresses the cloud transformation challenges I spoke about earlier by making it easy to migrate application delivery, giving users consistency in performance and visibility across their on-prem or cloud environments, and giving all teams the traffic management features that they demand, including things like JSON Web Token authentication, integrated security, and so much more.
Yeah, so this is exactly what we hear from our developers. So when we recognize these challenges that our users are facing with using NGINX on Azure, Microsoft and F5 began collaboration over a year ago to really understand how we can address this together. So we want to ensure that users have the most authentic experiences of NGINX and can use it in a very Azure native way. Today, we're announcing that Microsoft Azure and F5 NGINX have expanded our partnership to help address those challenges and business critical requirements that enterprises are facing with their advanced traffic service using NGINX. We're announcing the newly released NGINX for Azure here at Build, which is a joint effort co-developed by the two companies. Kara, can you tell us more about how this partnership helps our developers and enterprises?
Now, NGINX for Azure is an Azure native service that lets you seamlessly extend your workloads to the cloud and deliver secure and high-performance applications using familiar and trusted load balancing solutions from NGINX. This means that enterprises can now lift and shift their existing on-prem apps to Azure cloud seamlessly by bringing their own configurations of NGINX and deploying them from the Azure marketplace. This gives them consistency and performance and security across their portfolio of on-prem and Azure cloud apps by using the same load balancing solution and configurations everywhere. That's important to the operators of these 400 million websites that are powered by NGINX, as well as the army of developers who support them. They can now leverage all of the learning and development with Azure, which 95% of Fortune 500 companies trust their business to. This is truly a powerhouse combination. F5 customers like Causeway Capital Management have already begun using this service, and they're thrilled with the experience so far. I also want to restate and highlight that NGINX for Azure isn't an add-on product. It's a native Azure integration of the NGINX offering with complementary integrations into the different aspects of the customer experience. So think about this as a way for any Azure shop to leverage their NGINX configuration in a safe, seamless, and approved environment.
It always amazes me when I think about 400 million websites that are powered by NGINX. Our partner ecosystem is very important to us. So in order to facilitate this level of deep integration that Kara spoke of, we have built on top of Azure's marketplace infrastructure to help partner offerings integrate into the Azure platform. This level of Azure native integration not only provides the seamless experiences of deploying the service, and it helps address the complexity that comes with managing these partner services. Kara, can you also share with us your experiences on leveraging these infrastructure enhancement for NGINX deployment and management?
Yeah, so the deployment of NGINX for Azure is really simplified with this integration. Literally, it's just a few clicks inside of the Azure marketplace for you to start configuring advanced traffic management and security capabilities, the state-of-the-art monitoring capabilities, and porting customer custom configurations and more. So it has a wealth of features and it's really easy to use. I'm super impressed with the whole experience around it. NGINX is complemented by the native integrations with Azure Key Vault for SSL and TLS certificate management. And it also has an integration with Azure Monitor for application monitoring and visibility, along with an integrated deployment model integrated with Azure ADO.
Yeah, and I will say, in addition to everything Kara just talked about, a big benefit of deploying NGINX for Azure as it relates to Azure ecosystem is that it also allow our customers to use their Azure consumed commitment, which we call MAC, so making it even more appealing to customers on Azure. Another great part about this collaboration is that not only is this an exclusive offering for Azure, but integration does also not stop with this particular announcement. The two companies and teams are continue to extend our collaboration and help address different developer and use scenarios. So Kara, tell us more about what's coming next potentially.
That's right, Julia. So just first around the MAC, the ability to draw down against that map continues to be a very compelling option for our customers, and it enables them to use this offering spend against their Azure commitments. And in the future, we're looking forward to supporting additional NGINX use cases in areas such as static content offload and content caching, support for additional proxying protocols, improved security, session persistence, rate limiting, and others. We also plan to support better automation workflows in areas such as key rotation, zero-time upgrades, NGINX config validation, and greater interaction with Azure's native services. Juliet, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
Well, given that you lead the developer division in Microsoft, how do you see this integration playing out with the developer community?
Well, developer is super important to us from day one, and we have some of the most amazing developer assets from Visual Studio Code, and GitHub. And then we are really committed to continue to support our developers with their needs across all of their journeys. And no matter what kind of operating system they use, what kind of programming language they use. And I think NGINX is just an example of how working with open source partners and ecosystem to really deliver the best, authentic native experiences on the cloud of their choice and for them.
That deeply resonates with the experiences that we seek to deliver with NGINX, making it much easier for them to shift left many of the capabilities in app delivery and security. So this is an amazing partnership for F5, Microsoft, and our joint developer customers.
Well, thanks so much, Kara, for coming to this announcement. And thanks everyone who have tuned in. So I want to really encourage everyone to give new NGINX on Azure a try. Please visit Azure Marketplace today. Happy coding.
Thank you, Julie and Kara, and hello, everyone. My name is Eric Braun, and I lead product and commercial strategy for F5 NGINX. It's a pleasure to be here with you today. We're going to continue the discussion regarding NGINX for Azure by digging a bit deeper into a number of topics. I'm going to walk you through the broad challenges that the industry faces, how NGINX for Azure addresses these challenges, a few highlights of the NGINX for Azure service architecture and how it works, who the service is for, an example of a customer's success with NGINX for Azure, and we'll wrap it up with how you buy it. Once we're done here, I will pass you along to Rohit Tadashar, Principal Product Manager at Azure, who will walk you through a demo. As we all know, nearly every company today is in the business of or are reliant upon apps in one way or another. According to responses to the 2020 State of Application Services survey, 98% of respondents globally reported they rely on applications to operate their business. Given the criticality of apps today, ensuring their successful delivery and operations has become paramount. So this leads us to the question, why NGINX for Azure? We created NGINX for Azure to address the biggest challenges and pain points that developers and operators experience trying to deploy and operate applications and services in the cloud. First, we know there's a steep learning curve that comes along with standing up and operating new services that are often unique to cloud versus leveraging the software that you've grown to understand and love for your on-prem deployments. This not only leads to an inability to reuse valuable domain expertise, but it also doesn't allow for reuse of investments in proprietary configurations, as well as deeply embedded deployment and operations tools. It also leads to inconsistencies in performance, security, and observability. Lastly, it often leads to missing highly valued features such as advanced traffic management from your load balancer. All of this can lead to a disappointing and limiting experience for developers and operators when the objective was to empower them by shifting left without making any sacrifices along the way. For these reasons, we're here today to offer you NGINX for Azure. NGINX has long been a backbone of the internet, powering hundreds of millions of today's web applications that require high performance and security with lightweight demands on your system resources. NGINX is now being offered as a native service on Azure that lets you seamlessly extend workloads to the cloud by bringing the NGINX configurations that you're already using today and applying them to a simple deployment from the Azure Marketplace. From there, we handle all the lifecycle management operations for you, and that's just the start. Getting back to the challenges that we reviewed, let me tell you how NGINX for Azure addresses them. NGINX for Azure is easy to learn, deploy, and operate at a global scale. You get to harness and deploy all of the power of NGINX as a load balancer within the native Azure experience. Further, you get seamless integration with some of Azure's core services, but more on this a bit later. We're making lift and shift simple and seamless. As mentioned earlier, empowering hundreds of millions of today's web applications, we know that there's an army of developers who have invested time, money, and resources creating custom, proprietary NGINX configurations. Our Bring Your Own Configuration, or BYOC model, makes setup easy, and it allows you to reuse your valuable investment and domain expertise. With NGINX for Azure, your load balancing can be universal across all environments everywhere. This goes beyond configurations and extends to the security and performance of NGINX that you've come to expect. Speaking of security, we started with the basics, providing SSL termination and JOT authentication, and we provide native integration with Azure Key Vault, but we assure you that this is just the beginning. NGINX for Azure also comes with advanced traffic management features, including active health checks, and you get far greater end-to-end visibility of the usage and performance of your applications and services. We talked about why NGINX for Azure, and now we'll discuss what is NGINX for Azure. NGINX for Azure is a very unique solution. It was jointly developed by F5 and Microsoft as a continuation of the strong partnership that's been happening now for over a decade. This collaboration between the Azure Lifter team and NGINX resulted in a service that is not a random third-party solution bolted onto Azure. This is a native service inside of Azure with NGINX Plus at its heart. It lets operators and developers leverage the Azure portal, the Azure API and SDK, and the Azure CLI. It also integrates flawlessly with the Azure ecosystem, including Active Directory, Key Vault, Azure Monitor, and more. So how does NGINX for Azure work? How do you make the magic happen? You can set up NGINX for Azure with just a few clicks inside of the Azure portal. It's literally just a few clicks to get NGINX features and functionality added to your Azure environment, where it's fast and easy to deploy, configure, and monitor your pre-built NGINX configurations. For those of you that don't already have pre-built NGINX instances, we will also provide examples which show you how to store your NGINX configs in Azure DevOps or GitHub repos and upload those configs into your NGINX for Azure deployment via CI/CD pipeline hooks native to that environment. We will also publish examples of using Azure Resource Manager templates to configure NGINX for Azure. Let's take a quick look at some of the highlights of the service before seeing it all in Rohit's demo. Here you can set your deployment resource group, your billing details, name, and region. Next, you can select your virtual network, the subnet, the IP address type, and whether or not it's public or private. Then review and accept and let NGINX for Azure populate. You can see here that deployment is in progress, and in no time, the configuration is complete. Lastly, here's the configuration dashboard where you can manage your NGINX for Azure configuration going forward. You can see that there is an activity log, configurable access rights, and there are also control panels for configuration, certificates, and monitoring. And there are a number of other items, such as alerts. And as mentioned, you get a seamless integration with some of Azure's core services. You get Azure Key Vault for SSL TLS cert automation and added security for keys and passwords. You get GitHub Actions to configure CI/CD workflows for creation or update of NGINX configuration files, as well as secrets management. And you get Azure Monitor, where you can customize your single pane of visualization across multiple deployments. We've talked a lot about developers and operators, but let's talk more about who NGINX for Azure is for. Using NGINX for Azure is an easy decision for Azure shops that are already aware of or are already leveraging the power of NGINX today. While the primary users are cloud developers, DevOps, and platform ops, many others may be involved in the evaluation of NGINX for Azure, and ultimately, the buying decision could be made by one or several of an organization's technology leaders. Let's take a quick look at a customer that matches this profile. Pete Peterson is the CTO and Chief Information Security Officer at Causeway Capital Management. Causeway Capital has been around for 2 decades, and they manage $44 billion in assets around the globe. They also happen to be an Azure shop and a user of NGINX. Some of the important advantages that Causeway Capital receives from NGINX for Azure are the ability to reuse their existing NGINX configurations, consistency in security, performance, and functionality, and complete end-to-end visibility into usage and performance. We're proud of the work that we're doing with Pete and Causeway Capital. Last but not least, how do you buy NGINX for Azure? You can purchase NGINX for Azure as pay-as-you-go, or you can pay up front with a private plan or offer. A great bonus for purchasing NGINX is that it counts against your Microsoft Azure consumption commitment, letting you further buy down your annual commitment. Okay, now you have a complete picture of all of the whys, whats, hows, and for whoms. And with that, I thank you for your time and attention, and I will turn you over to Rohit for the demo.
Thank you, Eric. In today's demo, we will start with the initial deployment of the NGINX for Azure resource, including the network configurations that allow for subnet delegation and the associated network mapping. From there, we will move to the management of the NGINX config file for both default and trusted scenarios, along with setting up certificates and managed identity. We will end the demo with a demo of the NGINX configuration automatically integrated into your GitHub deployment. This is the initial experience for the user to deploy the NGINX service with all the basic information needed to deploy the NGINX service on Azure, related to the subscriptions, regions, and the associated pricing as set by NGINX. In the Networking tab, the user can specify the virtual network and the delegated subnet with the associated approval, along with specifying either a public or private endpoint. The user can then review the inputs and initiate the deployment. As you can see, the above integration greatly simplifies the deployment process. And once the deployment is complete, we can navigate to the overview page of this resource. The overview page provides the basic information related to this NGINX resource. You should now be able to browse to the IP address and see the default NGINX page. Next, we will review the NGINX config file, which is a very critical component of the NGINX management. We have brought in the ability to monitor and import existing config files from your on-prem deployments and apply them directly against the cloud deployment via a custom Monaco editor that has inbuilt validations and recommendations for the config file. As you can see, the configuration files are applied to the deployment, and you are able to view the application that is supported by this configuration. We can verify that the config files has been applied by browsing to the IP address. The different colors here indicate the different compute instances, aka the virtual machines sitting behind our demo application. The toggle between the VMs showcase the actual load balancing happening between the different virtual machines. Next, we will showcase the multi-config support. In most practical instances, users typically use multiple config files to split up their deployments. To help with those scenarios, we also support the ability to upload multiple configuration files and have them automatically applied to your deployment. We can again browse the IP address and see the multi-config file is now being applied. Now, we will see how a user can bring in a certificate and configure their user-assigned managed identity to help set up secure HTTPS-based deployments of their configuration. Once the managed identity is created, it can then be associated to a certificate. As you can see, the steps to add a certificate to your key vault and associate it with the managed identity, and this is all now available via the portal integration. You can then go back to the configurations and upload the config files corresponding to your secure HTTPS-based deployment. Once this is saved, you can browse back to the individual IP address and see that the HTTPS-based deployments are available for each of the individual VMs and the load balanced feature in effect. With the GitHub integrations, we will show how you are able to take these NGINX config files that have been lift and shifted from your on-prem deployment to your cloud deployment and apply them as part of your continuous CI/CD deployments. You can go to your config files that is in your GitHub location and update the GitHub actions to now include this file location to be deployed as part of your regular CI/CD pipeline. As you can see, the CI/CD process automatically triggers the different steps, including the deployment of the config file. We can then go back to the site and see that the new file has indeed been deployed. And finally, we'll see how to turn on the metrics for the NGINX on Azure service and view the metrics within the portal. Turning on metrics is as simple as toggling the metrics switch under the NGINX monitoring section. Once enabled and saved, you can go to the metrics section to start viewing the different metrics related to your deployment. With that, we conclude today's demo. Thank you for your time and hope you enjoyed the earlier presentations from Eric, Kara, and Julia, and you are now ready to start using this offering. Thank you.